Right, welcome, Minister Patterson. Great to see you again. Thank you very much for coming to the fantastic Primary Production Select Committee. We have you for 45 minutes. So if you want to do some introductory remarks, I know we do have a few questions from the team.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will keep my introductions quite brief. I'm aware that you've had a marathon week and, I'd like it to be more back and forward. I know that you're familiar with Ray and Jane and the rest of the team that will have probably been sitting in here for hours on end. So from a rural communities perspective, it has been a stellar year in terms of across the board commodity prices at record or near record levels in most cases, interest rates falling significantly, and tourism numbers heading back towards pre-COVID levels. So also note that that's reflected in record levels of confidence within our farming sector, which of course underpins much of our rural communities. From what I can see, initial caution is now leading to investment, and as a general rule of thumb, I think the further south you go, the better it gets in many respects, of course, but in this case, economically. That said, there is a lot of challenges still for our rural communities. At the forefront, and what I've highlighted in the past, the severe pressure that our rural health sector is under. Minister Ducey is to be commended in convening a series of 13 rural health roadshows around the country, for which myself and the rural communities team supported. We now are in possession of a report that will be released publicly on the 15th of December, I believe, which is a really good insight into the current state of play. But in broad terms, the consistent themes are access to workforce, challenges around that, travel allowances, and a clear desire to deliver more services close to home. And I think that is it's a response to the fact that we had a massive centralisation of the Health New Zealand. It was very fragmented and then rolled into one, and then that has led to a disconnect to the front line of rural health servicing. And we're now seeing that unwinding and more regionalisation of it and that. So we're heading in the right direction, but it's clear that had led to a disconnect from frontline services. Issues around connectivity continue to be a challenge. We've got the shape of the roll-up of copper wire service that we're working through at the moment. There's the 3G getting turned off coming up, so that's we're keeping a very close eye on that, and certainly, and as highlighted recently, the resilience of our communications networks during emergency management events. One of the key focuses that we've highlighted before to this committee, and I just commend Jane and her team for the work, is because it's sort of unheralded stuff, but the work they're doing around statistics, because my first question in getting this role is how do we define a rural community, and exactly. it seems like every department categorises it differently, so there's work going on, and Jane and her team are leading that to standardise that. And just as an example, I think the current statistics point to about 16% of New Zealand being classified as regional, where we believe it could be as rural. We believe that could be as high as 25%, which makes a material difference within this ecosystem and how resources are distributed. So I see that as under the radar, but really important work that the rural communities team are doing. In terms of forestry, has obviously been another one that's been something that's rural weir has been a real flashpoint in rural communities, and I'm pleased that we have landed the restrictions on class 1 to 6 land and driving very much for that right tree, right place. In terms of the positives, I think that the upcoming reforms to the resource management Act will be hugely welcomed in our rural communities. It has just got far too hard to get things done. And I would also like to highlight investment in irrigation and water storage. That MPI leads some of that work, but it also crosses over into my regional development portfolio with Kānoa. Investment in significant investment in Canterbury, Northland, smaller investments in Wairarapa and Tairāwhiti, but there is much more to do. Huranui, bigger schemes in Tairāwhiti, significant schemes in Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa and Central Otago. And just to finish, the wool thing, which is really good to see, the wool price lifting, which has given farmers a little bit of hope. We're not at levels now where people are jumping for joy, but at least we're reached the very low bar of covering shearing costs and a little bit of a addition to the bottom line rather than a cost. A lot of the innovation that's been funded through MPI over the years, things like acoustic panelling, the pigments, particles and powder stuff, which I consider to be the holy grail because it's the game changer, and there'll be some announcements around that next week. Actually, on Monday, I'm going down to highlight the first commercial shipment going, which hopefully will then lead on to wider investment into that very promising category for wool into bioagents, and that I will point out has the ability to take genuine scale. It's not just a wee niche opportunity, and we're seeing investments starting to flow into onshore manufacturing, and hopefully some more to be announced soon. And just finally, the Wool Alliance, which is an amalgamation or an enduring model. What does an enduring model for the wool industry look like? That hasn't had an industry body for one of its only two primary sector industries that doesn't have an industry group representing it since the Wool Board and the levy got voted down. So we're looking at bringing the Wool Alliance together, which is Wool Impact, the Campaign for Wool, RONS, which is the research and development arm, and aligned with Beef and Lamb New Zealand. So that work is now being socialised with farmers in terms of what that's going to look like. So with that, I'll just open up to the committee for questioning.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. Right, Jo.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this morning, Minister. And again, thanks to the team who are accompanying you. In the past, when I've asked you questions about your role as Minister, you've mentioned that it's largely one of advocacy. So I kind of want to target my questions to you around that today. And I want to start off, I've got a few primaries, but I'll start off and a few supplementaries, if you'll indulge me, Madam Chair, around school buses, rural school buses. And recently, it's a big issue for our rural communities, right? And recently, families in Marae Kākoho say they're being left with unaffordable transport costs after learning the Ministry of Education will discontinue their school bus route to 3 Hastings secondary schools next year. So my questions around that to you, Minister, are, have you raised any concerns with the Minister of Education about the impact that these cancellations will have on rural families?
Yes, we met with the Minister, actually with rural women who have been quite vocal on this. So it's something that we are advocating for. But as you'll be aware, I mean, that formula for rural buses hasn't changed since 1991, I think. So actually the same as under the government you were in. So it continues to be a bit of a work in progress. But yeah, so I have no real updates in terms of changes. But yeah, we're certainly making the Minister aware that, you know, some of these communities are impacted. Supplementary,
Madam Chair, do you think it's acceptable that parents in Marae Kākoho will be facing unacceptable costs simply to get their children to school?
Look, there's always going to be impacted community. We've got to look at this at a systematic level. So yeah, I do, absolutely I do. But how do we have a system that's flexible enough to accommodate those examples? And I think, you know, my own view on this, and certainly what we're advocating for, is it's too inflexible at the moment, and there needs to be some ability to innovate within that that model. Jane, you might like to pick up on some of this in detail.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're right, Minister. The way that they do the formula is it hasn't been updated for a number of years, and some of the difficulties. It's almost there's an annual point in the year where they set the school bus routes for the following year. So every year there's population changes because children either move from primary to secondary school or from secondary school out into the big wide world, and that means that sometimes school bus routes fall in and out of eligibility for running because they don't have the students up the driveway anymore, and so annually there is always unfortunately some movements and some shifts. There are some bus routes that get added, there are some bus routes that get subtracted, so it is disappointing to see, but it is unfortunately one of those things that the ministry keeps an eye on every year and then re-tenders those services. They tender the other services for longer periods of time, but there is always a bit of movement around the margins.
Thank you. Supplementary. As Minister for Rural Communities, do you think that this treats rural communities fairly with the decisions like this around our school buses and our children not being able to access the school of their choice because of the changes, these changes to the bus routes?
Well, it's a consistent formula that's been there for a long period of time. So as I say, I do think there's room for more flexibility. We're not directly in control of dictating that, but that's certainly what we're advocating for.
And final supplementary rolled into one, Madam Chair. Will you advocate for the reinstatement of the Marae Kākaho School bus route for families in that community? And also, what have you done as far as advocating, well, more than advocating for rural communities that are facing unaffordable costs to get their children to school in your role as Minister for Rural Communities?
Well, I'm not, I don't believe I stand to be corrected, but I don't believe I've been directly lobbied by that school that you referenced. So absolutely, if they want to get in touch with me, but it's a systematic thing. I do think it deserves more flexibility and the ability of other services to be tacked onto it so that it does make it economic. I would point out that the Ministry of Education spends $263 million a year on school buses, so it is a big expense, and that's an absolute necessity. There's no, this is not a cost-saving thing, but it's got to be economic. There's not a bottomless pit of money.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd argue that the ministry spends not on funding kids to get to their closest school, and that I think the review first came up in 2023, but you guys pushed it to the side, so it's just one of those things that goes through.
Madam
But anyway,
Chair.
right, yes, Mark, question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good Minister, good to see you, as always. Sorry for my absence. Sir, do you want to speak to the issues concerning rural contractors? I don't know if you've had any discussion with officials and around rural contractors, the issues in and around some of the equipment issues that they're having with New Zealand Police, officiating the law as the law is written. And are you working with various ministers outside of your wheelhouse to try and alleviate some of the concerns that rural contractors have had in and around rural New Zealand, moving their gear up and down rural New Zealand, doing their job?
Yes, well, I certainly am aware of this position, particularly around the Waikato region. It's I've certainly we've had meetings and correspondence with those contractors. So that, I mean, that's in terms of, I'd have to go, but this is going back a little bit, Mark. The weights and the licensing. So yes, I mean, it's something that has been going on for a long period of time, hasn't all of a sudden the police have decided to enforce these laws. But in terms of specific advocacy beyond sort of anecdotal discussions with ministers and other MPs, I couldn't actually point to a genuine action on that. I'm being totally honest with you, Mark.
Very good. Thank you, Minister.
We have done them.
Scott, did you have a question?
Hang on a second, Mark. I think I'll bring Jane in. Yeah.
Sorry, we did raise these concerns prior, but I don't think it was within the current period of the review.
Yeah.
So I think it was possibly a previous.
I appreciate that it's ongoing, but I think to that point, the fact that it is ongoing would fall inside this annual review period. I mean, this problem has not gone away, and I just wondered if we managing to get a handle on that problem, or is it continuing?
Look, I haven't, the discussions I had were probably going back 12 months ago. So that was kind of I'm a bit vague on the details, but I haven't, we haven't been approached lately on that issue. So I guess my assumption is that there is some discretion being utilised by the police.
Okay.
But if that's something that you're hearing is still ongoing, then I'm more than happy to take it up.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on to Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Good to see you, Minister. And I'm very keen to explore health a little bit more, because there's been a $7 billion investment into health under this government. And what support, other than a report that's coming out, what support, actual support, has been provided for rural communities in particular?
Well, I'm going to circulate this report to the committee through the clerk when it becomes publicly available, because I would like this committee to actually dig into this issue a little bit more. But what we're starting to see is there is some movement. We're starting to get some resourcing to the front line, which is what we're aiming at. There's been 164 million, for example, put into the after hours and emergency care in rural communities. There's a number of initiatives that I could go through that we have rural hubs now being, I'll just better get the terminology right. So the after hours urgent care. So there's 6 rural prototype locations that have been are up and running. Now we're looking to roll them out to 70. So acknowledging that that's a system that's under real pressure, but that is an example, that good example of work actually progressing. Rural training hubs. So we've had 4 rural training hubs. The first one in Harua has been established, and we're looking at 1 in each of the 4 regions. And you will also be well aware of the Waikato Medical School in the rural.
Very aware.
Yeah. So
Great news.
Yeah. So that, and I'd like to go into that a little bit, because I was a doubting Thomas on this. Obviously been lobbied hard like you had by the University of Otago.
Well, we're an economically rational party.
Yeah. It's not April Fool's Day, Scott. So I was a doubting Thomas until I actually met with him actually at Te Kuiti, and once I was fully aware of why the current system isn't working. So we've got the rural immersion courses within Otago and Auckland. But what we're seeing is, say, an intake of 200, there might be a dozen students that decide to go into the rural immersion course, which we're seeing maybe 3 or 4 actually go into rural practice. So we've got this massive funnel that ends up with virtually no students actually going into rural. And the Waikato Medical School will be specifically targeting, it'll be full rural immersion. So the students that go in there will come out and go into rural. So that's, I think, a massive step in the right direction. It is going to take a while to work its way through, but now that I fully understand the concept and why the current system isn't delivering, I think this has the potential to be a bit of a game changer for our rural workforces.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Yes.
So are you saying that students who go through the Waikato Medical School will be bonded to rural communities? Is that what is the intention?
Well, there's already bonding available in a voluntary basis, so you can apply. There's a formula there. So students that do go into rural and stay 3, 4 or 5 years, there is a write-off in the student loans. But what we're finding is that that's not being taken up at a very high level. Students want to retain some flexibility. So whether more bonding is the answer, I don't know. evidence to date is pretty thin on that.
So that's a no, you're not bonding, you're not requiring students to be.
Well, it's bearing in mind it's not me that is making
Okay.
these decisions, but I don't think that's the intention.
Okay, thank you, Minister. I think we'll move on.
I've got a few supplementary.
Can I also just highlight, because it is important, and we did have direct input into the rural health package, that wellbeing package that was in the budget, $12 million over 4 years. We've seen recently an announcement, $2.7 million into Farm Strong. I understand the Rural Support Trust is close to signing a delivery agreement as well with the Ministry of Health. So that's new money coming into rural health and wellbeing.
Thank you. Right, we have a sup through the chair, please. We have a sup from Hamish Campbell.
Excellent. Thank you, Minister. What impact do you think telehealth will have to take the pressure off rural GPs to broaden access to rural communities?
A very good question. It's being utilised more and more and utilised quite well. So yes, I think it does have a very important place. The other thing I'm hearing, though, if I'm being honest, is that we've got to be careful we don't make this a default position. So it's getting balanced there, where it's supplementing and taking the pressure off the existing workforce, but it's not getting to the point where we can use it as a catch-all where, okay, they've got access to telehealth. The other part of that is rural connectivity. We've got to make sure that the connectivity is adequate to be able to provide the service, and that is something that Minister Ducey and I are actually meeting shortly with Minister Goldsmith to just work through where some of the gaps are and where we can fill them.
Yeah, and I understand with the medical school that it's a graduate medical school, so the students do a year on site in Hamilton, and then they'll get placed in certain rural hospitals and medical centres around the country. So that's how it's going to work, as I understand it, the model.
And I think the other important thing to that, Madam Chair, is that these are people that are going in specifically to train for rural, and they're targeting people that are from rural communities in the first place, that actually have a desire to serve in these communities.
100%. Thank you. Right, one very quick sup, Scott, and then we're going to move on. Thank you.
So something like a quarter of people aged over 65 live in rural communities. That's 20% of the population. What of the targeted budgeting is going to that cohort? And what's the plans to make sure there's better health outcomes for our elderly living in rural communities?
Well, that's one of the things the report does shine a light on. The big change coming there is that the capitation model is being reviewed, and from the 1st of July next year, like we saw a 6.5% uplift this year in capitation for GPs, but the model is being reviewed, and rurality is going to be a factor, not just age or sex or whatever. So rurality and the challenges that our seniors in rural areas have in getting access to healthcare will be very much part of that. So I think that's a big step forward.
Thank you. Right, we've now got a new line of questioning from Mike Buttrick.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, 9th of April, yourself and Minister Willis had a wall announcement that effective 1st of July 2025, agencies or ministries should use wool where practical and possible. How's that gone?
Well, I guess the flagship contract is with Aotearoa, so it was good to see them quickly come on board after a lot of public pressure as well, which was great to see, actually. The public are right behind us, the wall in government buildings. In terms of the reporting, there's an annual report back, so the various departments have to report back on what their uptake of wool has been, and if they haven't used wool in a particular build, why they haven't. Also note that since that time, there's been a further bolstering this policy is the fact that the procurement rules have been changed, where benefits in New Zealand has got to be built in more rigorously and taken into account, so not just price. So we expect that to also assist wool.
Yep, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Is this your
Yes,
primary
I
question?
have a primary question, Madam Chair, yes.
Yeah, well, you're in
It's
the
a
queue,
supplementary on the
sorry.
wall question though, but it is to do with the wall. Is that all right?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
fine.
Minister, if I can, on the back of Mike Butterick's question, obviously that was more domestic conversation around wool. What about you working with Minister Macleay in terms of market access for offshore wool markets for New Zealand product? In so much as that I know that the Chinese populace is going through all manner of rigorous change and has got some real internal problems. Are we looking for new markets for wool offshore? And are you advocating for that with Minister Macleay?
Absolutely, yes. Well, the Wool Impact initiative that's partly funded through MPI, that's their primary focus is trying to bring global brands, attach global brands to local manufacturers. And that has, because you're right, the wool and government buildings and some of the domestic initiatives are really good, but it's actually those export markets. India, the free trade deal, I don't know if many people are aware, but wool's actually our biggest export commodity into India. They've got a national strategy of tripling their textile exports over the next by 2030. It's already a massive industry. So the work that Minister Macleay is doing, opening up the free trade deal, will be massive for that. And I also travelled to China as part of a delegation September, I think, and the Nanjing wool market, where 30% of New Zealand's wool is traded, and that was extremely positive in terms of, from our perspective, they were almost desperate as where's the wool, and they were concerned about the price rising. There has been it's stuff like uniforms into the train conduct, as you're aware, it's very centralised over there, so a lot of it goes to uniforms through these massive government departments that they have over there. So there's a pivot to wool there. There's some stuff around the EU regulations that have really advantageous for natural fibres in terms of some of the regulation they're putting on synthetics. So there's lots of good stuff that these trade deals are opening up, and the work that our both Wool Impact and NZT and the like are doing to assist some of our local manufacturers gain access to these markets. So very positive.
Excellent.
Thank
Okay.
you, Minister.
Thank you. Look, I'm conscious we've got 15 minutes more of the Minister's time. I've got primaries from Joe, Mark and Scott, so we'll fire away. Joe.
Thank you. And I just do want to acknowledge all the work that you've done in the wool space, Minister. Coming back to your advocacy though, one of the first questions or first times you were before our select committee, I think I asked you about your advocacy about the concerns that the disabilities community raised about access to services in rural communities. And at that time, that was something that hadn't been on your radar. And I'm just interested to know what engagement, if any, you've had in that space since then and in your role as Minister.
Jane, have we got, I'm actually not, I'll be totally honest with you, Joe, I'm not aware of any specific representations we've had from the disability community. One of the issues with this portfolio is it's so wide-ranging, like everything, and it's like, what do you focus on? And so some of these things we just literally don't have the capacity to take up unless they, they're lobbying hard for it.
It would probably be good. I think the community would probably really appreciate.
I'll take it on board.
Alternatively, if the ministers are doing something or a proposal in that space, then that's when we tend to engage. But I would also say we just recently had somebody join our team from the Ministry for Disabilities. So getting a little bit of a viewpoint in there for the team.
And I understand Minister Upston and Ducey are both working really proactively in that space, and that's across all communities.
And we engage in.
One's up
And that's it. And so my supplementary is around advocacy and your role in advocacy, and with the recent changes that we've seen to pay equity, and that affects a lot of rural women who work with, those in the disabled community, the senior citizens and all those sorts of teachers, etc. What advocacy did you play when that decision was being discussed? Did you argue for those in the rural community, the women that are largely impacted by that decision?
That was a cabinet decision which we didn't have any specific
no
input
input?
into.
No conversations?
No, that wasn't something that we've
Okay.
specifically advocated
Thank
for.
you.
But I would say that since, I'd hate to give the impression we've done nothing, because since June, since we were last year, I think we've, 53 cabinet papers that we have contributed to with the rural lens. So, it is a very broad space with, a small team. So we do have to focus our efforts.
And I do want to acknowledge the team in the Office for Rural Communities. They do a great job. Thank you.
Okay, Mark. did
Yeah,
you-
finally, Minister, it'd be like my last question, I think. I'm thinking of the labour forces in the rural labour force and some of the questions that Joe and I have had in the past about vocational training to you and how education has bled into the labour force. How are you working with the education sector where you can to advocate for young learners, people that have gone through some sort of education system to go into the labour force, and what retention looks like? Because there seems to be a breakdown often when young people are leaving high school in rural communities. And if they are staying in those communities, often they don't necessitate full-time employment a lot of the time. It's been an issue before. Is it an issue now? And are you canvassing that with Jane and your team?
Thanks for that question, Mark. I think it's a really important one. Yes, we are. As you'll be aware, there's quite significant reforms to the vocational education that Minister Simmons is putting through. And whilst Minister Hoggard has the rural skills portfolio, we do recognise this is a pretty significant issue. So we have been quite involved in this. Actually, one of the things that we have advocated for successfully within those reforms, there was $20 million kept aside for specific rural initiatives, and I was very pleased to see Telford down in South Otago be the recipient of some of that extra funding. Very important for our rural sector. But more broadly, there's a group called Ag People and Pathways that we've been engaging with, and I understand Mike Buttrick and Joe Luxon have also been engaged with them. To be fair, they're a little bit concerned about the big swings in policy between governments, and they're wanting to have a broader oversight. And we're talking about groups like the Ag ITOs, Growing Future Farmers, the like. So very, very credible group. So Minister Hoggard and I are working with them to understand some of their concerns a bit more, because they want to have a more holistic picture right from what we're teaching in schools through to retention, as you rightly point out, is really critical, and what we need to do to just improve that. So it's a big piece of work, but we're really engaged in it because we think it's important, and it is important. I guess watch this space a little bit. I can assure you we are engaged in it.
Thank you,
Thank you
Minister.
very much. Right, far away, Scott.
Thank you. So the Jobs for Nature program helped improve our freshwater quality, our biosecurity, our biodiversity, and what modelling has been done to look at the impact of cutting that program on our environment.
Cut.
Well, that was time limited
Yeah.
funding. So, I guess that was a priority of past government. I guess we've got to put another hat on here, but through the regional development portfolio, I sit on the Labour Market Ministers Group, and I have actually asked that question for some modelling to be done. So, yeah.
So one of the big benefits, to Mark's point, was the ability to employ young people and train and upskill workers, so that vocational training that happened through the Jobs for Nature. If you're thinking about keeping some part of it or reinstating some part of it, is this where you're thinking of going to make sure that we have that youth employment and that pathway into employment in our rural communities?
Bearing in mind we don't make these decisions, but on an advocacy basis, I'll just go back to our previous discussion. I think one of the things we've found is some of this time-limited budgeting, and there was, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of the program, but when I was up in Aotearoa last week, or in the Bay of Plenty, we went to a mussel farm, Aotearoa, and they were referencing a program with a te reo name that I can't recall, and they were saying, look, it was actually going pretty well, and then the funding got cut, and that's exactly what these Ag People and Pathways people are talking about, is what, so what's working, what's not, doesn't feel particularly coordinated at the moment, and they want to have, and they feel we need greater oversight over it, and I've asked Jane and her team to do a piece of work on exactly those issues.
One final sup. Minister, I've visited the Wakatipu Basin Twizel and looked at the wilding pine problem recently through the Molesworth. Wilding pines are infesting our hill and high country. They were being managed under the Jobs for Nature program. What investment is going into ensuring that we keep wilding pines, we keep our hill and high country? What investment is going into ensuring that we manage the wilding pine crisis that we're facing?
Well, there has been extra investment above the baseline, which is something like $2 million, but I'll be honest with you, Scott, not enough. I genuinely believe not enough. This is a problem that we have to get our arms around, and that's certainly my advocacy. But it's not just funding, it's also, how do we use grazing, potentially fire as well, which some trial work's being done on at the moment. So it's kind of an all of the above thing, but I do think that's something that we need to more focus on. It's certainly something that is part of my advocacy towards budget 26.
Wish you all the best with that.
Chairman, I just want to make it clear, because it came up yesterday in the committee as well, that the Jobs for Nature funding, it was a time limited budget, so it was not cut by this government.
Well, it's
I know.
no,
That's
a debating point.
Scrutinising the
Look,
yeah, they could have continued it.
I'll actually address that. I think, with all due respect, Madam Chair, that is semantics. It's the total that's going in, the economy going in, and it's outcomes based, and we are losing that battle at the moment, and we cannot lose that battle.
Excellent.
Okay.
You got others up?
I think I'll let them off.
Well, I keep answering your questions.
Oh, would you like to? Okay. We've seen in the Jobs for Nature funding that program the benefits were set to increase over the years with positive results in water quality, which we know is a real problem, but also avoiding flood damage rather than just building stuff. Avoiding flood damage in the first place is a lot cheaper, and in reducing unemployment. So what's the government doing now? Is it simply building stock banks rather than addressing the flood? Where's the government going?
Well, more good, Judge, because actually just building flood banks is really critical, and there's the regional funds put 200 million into that, which is co-invested. I think it's something like 450 million in total with regional councils. The Resource Management Act will make it a lot easier for river management to take place, which is a big issue in terms of managing some of these weather events. So I would argue we're doing a hell of a lot that doesn't necessarily, some of that's regulatory and not just a big dollop of money.
Big dollop of money.
But more broadly, in terms of I do think that Jobs for Nature program did have some, and I think the Wilding Pines is probably a good example of that. As I say, I have asked through the Labour Market Ministers group that I'm on to do analysis on that program. There is some evidence that there was quite a lot of inefficiency in it, but that doesn't mean the broad thrust of the program didn't have some merit. So,
Thank you, Minister. Right, I think we're all done. Thank you very much for your advocacy for rural communities. It is very much valued and appreciated. So thank you, and thanks for your time today.
Thanks.
Thank you, Minister.
thank you, Mark.